A slightly plump and festively dressed squire stands amidst the hustle and bustle of the medieval marketplace. Hear ye, citizens of Amelia! You look up from your daily business and turn to the squire as a hush falls over the crowd. He clears his throat and unfurls a scroll. The inconceivable one, ruler of the province of Amelia, king of nerds, conqueror of the journey, liberator of the slaves of social etiquette, founder of a place, Lego's finest architect, scribe beyond equal, master of the football, inventor of the thing. 5 minutes later. Eater of burgers, readers of books, lord of useless wisdom. His arrogance declares that when the heavenly spheres align and the lighter light has waned, after a time, another time, half a time, 2 times, 3 parts of a half a time, at that time, his most excellent, the squire breaks into a violent coughing fit. He clears his throat. I'm sorry, guys. This scroll is legit hard to read, and it makes literally no sense. He shucks the scroll over his shoulder. Just let me break it down for you. Basically, I'm considering coming to New Zealand this summer. My summer, not yours. And I wanted to know how much you guys want me to come. Oh, also, if you don't live in New Zealand, or at least don't live in there more, you can skip this part. And while I'm doing, interjections, I might as well say how annoying Revelation is. It's like, all these things will take place in a times, and half a time. And we're like, how darn long is a time? Like, is the tribulation going to come any second now? Or are we like 10,000 years away? Rubs hands down face. This is why I don't like Revelation. It's way too speculative. Anyway, back on topic. So what I'd like to know is how many of you would, first of all, really like me to come back to New Zealand. Because if you're just apathetic, then there's no way I'm going to spend the tons of cash it costs to get there. Second of all, who would house me and feed me for a few days? I know I just spent like a paragraph talking about how great I am, but wealthy is not among those characteristics. So yeah, if anyone could house and feed me for a few days, sometime in the month of June or May, or July, could you let me know so I can see if this idea is actually a feasible one? The other big make or break thing is a car. Does anyone have a car I could possibly rent or borrow during the time I'm there? I think just around a month. I know it's a bit of a long shot, but I looked it up, and a rental car would cost me, literally at best, $1,000 US, and that's like all my cash, so I can't really do that. So yeah, there's nothing planned yet. I just want to see if people are interested in me coming back, and if it's a feasible idea, and if you guys are like, yeah, we can do that, then maybe I'll coordinate some stuff. Still, there's a lot of things that would have to fall into place for this to work, so, prepare all your hopes to be brutally crushed. Now that's out of the way, let's get to the life updates. The squire pulls out another scroll from his garb. Citizens of... yeah, JK, I'm not doing that again. like, ever. Anyway, the significant thing I did since finishing last life signal was I finished reading and taking notes on Aquinas. 2 pieces of confetti drift to the ground. Yay. Anyway, the first significant thing I did was finishing my last life email, which was finished last time, and finishing the reading notes on Aquinas. Oh, wait, sorry, I read that again. Seriously, though, that was like a dense book. I took a lot of notes, I think like 12,000 words worth. So if you want to read those, you can just ask. The next day was Sunday, thus I went to church, and it was average. After we had a small group of us talking, and this old guy joined in and talked about absolutely insignificant things like the whole time, which was lame. Oh, and I don't know if you guys know this yet, but a thing I found super exciting happened. I know the answer to the ontological problem of evil. Seriously, you don't have a clue how happy that makes me, because, it's a seriously good atheistic argument. So if you want to check that out, I have written it down in, you guessed it, a paper. Well, it's more like a doc of notes. So if you want that, I can send that to you. Here's some pictures of the board outlining the refutation and my attempt to make the ontological argument work anyway, the quote-unquote strong ontological argument. Later that day was D&D, in which Neo just did an open world round and our party accomplished nothing. Well, nothing good. Then that night, Neo and Sydney had a bunch of people over at their house, including Aiden, which you may remember from way back. He was the small group leader. And there was something a little bit weird about him, but given my lack of emotional intelligence, I have no clue what it was. And then, yeah, me and Neo played some video games till midnight. The next day, I was sleep deprived, the product of getting to bed at 12:30, and getting up at 6:30. And I also had my history class. And I finally scraped by with an A in that class. So here's the stack of notes from that semester, literally just from that class. So picture papers that are tall. Later that day I did work. I met up with Noah from Southgate to hang out for a bit. Went to Chick-fil-A, and that was pretty good. But, okay. Man, let me describe this encounter I had while I was there. So, way back, we're talking in grade school way back, I had this best friend named Caleb, right? And so I'm sitting at Chick-fil-A, and who should walk up? So Caleb walks up in Chick-fil-A garb, and he's like, Alex? And I'm like, dude, I haven't seen you in ages. You work here? I'm super excited, right? Because I haven't seen him in 3 years. Caleb, seeming a little caught off guard, says, yeah. And me, still overly excited, how's life been? What's happening? Caleb, not a lot. Hey, I haven't seen you in the gym lately. Where you been? I pause for a second and blink. And this is the conversation that goes on inside my head. Me? Gym? What? Why would he ask that? Other me. Wait, isn't there a gym at school? Me. Yeah, but I don't see how that has anything to do. Oh, other me. Doesn't that kid Dylan, who looks just like Caleb, go to school and play soccer with you in the gym? Me. Oh no. I then proceed to break from my inner conversation with myself and look back at Caleb, who's not Caleb. It was at this point in the conversation I realized this was indeed Dylan, the kid I hardly knew from school, not my long-lost friend Caleb. And I did a serious mental facepalm. However, despite the fact I was talking to a completely different person than I had thought I was talking to, by some miracle, everything I had said up to this point had been, enough of a mistake to not be blatantly obvious. Oh, the mistake was only blatantly obvious to me. For all Dylan knew, this guy, who occasionally, gave him a high five and said good job after a game of soccer, just was really, really excited to see him. So yeah, by a social miracle, I was able to exit that conversation without looking like a complete idiot and leave the false impression I enjoy Dylan's presence much more than I actually do. It's like I had a social guardian angel watching over me. My only question now is, where has this guardian angel been my whole life? Like, where has my guardian angel been when I wrote down my honest thoughts with my classmate, who I honestly thought was a brat, which then so happened to be read by my teacher in front of the whole class? Where was my guardian angel when I told my coworker that I wasn't vulnerable to emotion like she was? And where was he when I asked my mom if she had eaten all those brownies? Come on, social guardian angel. I need you to pick up the slack here. Also, all those are true stories with the exception of the brownies one. Not that I wouldn't say that. In fact, I'm sure I just wouldn't care enough to remember if I did say that. In other cases, however, the people I've offended were very sure to make me remember my error. Yeah, fun times. Anyway, for once, I got out of a social situation largely unscathed. The next day was the last day of school before break. I finished the year with a 92 in psychology, a 99.5 in philosophy. Not flexing at all there. I did a workout with Caleb and then proceeded to hang out with Josiah. I bought us 2 large fries from Five Guys, and holy cow, that is a lot of fries. At the end, I was literally only eating fries out of obligation. But yeah, I don't distinctly remember the content of that conversation. We've had quite a few conversations, so they all kind of blur together. But I'm sure it was good. Then I briefly said hi to Noah, deep voice Noah, and went to the other Noah's house, Rational Christie leader Noah. And surprisingly, that was a good time. Not only did I beat Noah twice in chess, the first time with a 3-move checkmate, so a humiliating win. Smiles malevolently. But I also played Ticket to Ride while discussing hylomorphic dualism with the group. Seriously, such a good time. Now, I've heard that some of you actually care about these philosophical topics, so let me break down hylomorphic dualism for you. What I guarantee almost all of you believe is called Cartesian dualism, the belief that you, yourself, are entirely composed of your spirit and just happen to have a body. You're kind of like a guy in an Iron Man suit. I mean, yeah, having a body is nice and all, but you're still you if you take it off. Well, hylomorphic dualism is the belief that you are your Iron Man suit, or more technically, you is what we call a rational soul instantiated in matter. So should your soul fail to be embodied, it is no longer fully you, and should your body fail to be inspirited, is that a word? It is no longer fully you. You must have both to have you. Now, I know it sounds weird and unbiblical, but it's actually not. The church fathers, as far as I know, all held hylomorphic dualism, seeing as Cartesian dualism didn't come about until René Descartes, who lived in the 1700s. So yeah, I think hylomorphic dualism is probably true, because it gets around a lot of problems that Cartesian dualism has. So if you want to learn more about that, then send me an email, and I would be happy to ramble. So yeah, we talked about that as I played Ticket to Ride, and I barely lost to Noah. Clench his fist. So close. And it was overall an ideal kind of night. The next day, Christmas break had begun, and I had work, after which I had a work dinner, which was extremely boring until I discovered the INFJ INFP that sat across from me. The INFJ and INFP that sat across from me. The INFJ mentioned philosophy, and it was all downhill from there. I think I totally was enthusiastic, because while I was, getting excited to explain why God must abide by logic to the 2 feelers, and now I think about it, they probably didn't understand what I was saying. The other at the table was like, yes, hasn't the weather been lovely today? Mom was there, because we work at the same place, and she was trying to reel me in the whole time. Oh, and this conversation where I called my coworker vulnerable to emotion, she actually did not take kindly to. But overall, it was a really good conversation. The INFP kind of zoned out for 30 minutes, so it ended up just me and the INFJ talking. That's why I like INFJs. They're at least good at pretending to be thinkers. But the really interesting part of the conversation was the INFJ, Molly, claims to be able to feel emotionally like everything. Like people, things, all that. They have a distinct feeling to her. And not only that, but apparently they also produce visible images and physical sensations. Now, of course, I was really skeptical at first. So you could see an emotional aura around my head? Yeah, right. But we've been talking a bit through email, and I did some research, and the phenomenon is called sinistesia, and it's legit. Seriously, it's so weird. I read 2 academic articles on the subject, and I can send this to you if you care. So yeah, that was certainly an eye-opening experience. Later that night, I rushed to pick Grace up from youth group, because I may or may not have stayed extra late talking to Molly. And then I talked to a friend who had a lovely family, and never does anything wrong in his life. That's a bit sarcastic. Nothing ever goes wrong in his life. No, anyway. The next day, I felt sick and spent literally 5 hours just trying to write a paper on the definition of metaphysics. Seriously, it should not be so hard to define a stinking word. And of course, I later sent that paper to Matt, and he was like, yeah, your definition is questionable at best. So I spent 5 hours trying to define metaphysics. I didn't even get it right. This is why philosophy can be frustrating. Later that night, I watched this really old movie, 12 Angry Men, with Mom. It was actually pretty good. And I caught up on the emails and the reading that I needed to do. Here's how our house was looking around then. The next day, I wrote 5 one-page introspective papers on the ways I've been irrational, helpfully trying to counteract some irrationality. I then went to work and got home, and I worked on a paper outlining Aristotle metaphysics for 3 hours or so. Also that night, I had a dream about Thomas Aquinas, and I felt like that qualified me to be a Thomist. The day after that, I worked on my Aristotle metaphysics paper a lot. I also played this version of volleyball in racquetball court. That was really fun. Basically, it's volleyball and racquetball combined. We played for like 3 hours, and boy, I was exhausted at the end of it. Also, this guy who was playing with us majorly messed up his knee, which was really unfortunate. Unfortunately, he had waited a whole year to get back to the point where he could play games like this one, and then he dislocated again and lost all that progress. So yeah, if you get the chance, he could use some prayers. Then later that night, I talked with another New Zealand friend who caught me up what I'd missed on the journey, which was great. The day after that, I got up early and went to Mass. Yeah, you heard me. Catholic Mass. Don't worry, I don't intend to become Catholic anytime soon, but I've been learning a lot about Catholic dogma from Thomas Aquinas, and I've become pretty sympathetic to the Catholics. Fun fact, I've been talking with my Catholic friend, and we've been having a Catholic off. And so far, I've out-Catholicked her. Anyway, I've given her the hardest, most obscure questions I can think of, and hey, a win is a win. Anyway, it was interesting. I felt pretty out of place, that's sure. There was a lot of stuff. We came 30 minutes early, and there was this group of people just repeating the Hail Mary thing over and over and over again. I mean, it was incredibly boring, but you gotta admire their dedication. Overall, I was kind of disappointed with the lack of reverence. I came in knowing it would be boring and repetitious and ceremonial, but the actual service felt more like a thing people just did than a thing they meant. The priest didn't seem too reverent in the ceremony, but rather seemed to approach it like it was the next thing to do on his to-do list and he had to check it off. And I'm sure not all Catholic churches are like that, but I was still disappointed. So yeah, sat through that, and now I can say I've been to Catholic Mass. By the way, the reason I think none of you have to fear about becoming a Catholic is because to be a Catholic, you must literally accept every single doctrine the Church infallibly teaches. So even if I believed in transubstantiation, which the arguments aren't half bad for, by the way, the sacrament of confession, the infallibility of the Pope, etc. Even if I believed all those things, but just deny that, say, Mary is the Theotokos, not just the Christotokos, then I would have to still be a Protestant. The odds of me agreeing with everything the Catholic Church teaches are just so low. But all that aside, I really do think Protestants need to better understand Catholics and what they actually believe, because I had no clue before my aforementioned Catholic friend. I had no clue before, and my aforementioned Catholic friend suffered for it. After that, I went to Church of Southgate, and a bunch of Indian and Asian kids did a performance. It was different. I then went to D&D, and we fought a boss. Seriously, it was only by a genius move on Sydney's behalf, aka Greta, that we did not die. We were missing a member who just happened to be our tank, and somehow made it out alive. It was crazy. After barely surviving, we had pizza, and did a super short Bible study, and then did the dishes, and played video games till 11. The next day was pretty uneventful. I worked on my Aristotle metaphysics paper, and went to work, and responded to lengthy emails. The day after that, I spent an hour or so attempting to read a philosophical article. I don't think I really understood it. I finished what was now a 400-word paper on Aristotle metaphysics and sent it to Matt to see if I messed up, which I did, and then proceeded to clean my room, and unfortunately wasted the rest of the day. The next day, I had a dentist appointment in which they told me my tooth is possibly dying from the earlier teeth shattering experience, and if it dies, I'll need a root canal. So let's pray that doesn't happen. Oh, I had a warning for that. That's interesting. I then proceeded to work, go to youth group, and I tried to explain to people why holomorphic dualism is better than Cartesian dualism. Whenever the day came after that, I drove race to school. I had a doctor's appointment where they only gave me 1 vaccine because they thought my records must be incomplete. But no, I just really haven't been vaccinated to that degree. I then hung with Ben Myers, and we played racquetball, which was exhausting, and he won in the end. And then we kind of just wandered around and did other stuff until I finally took it back. The first part was fun. The second part was Matt. I then played ping pong with Dad that night, which was good, and I read all of Matt's blog posts. The next day, I helped clean the house, went to work, and then I went to watch a play at the Myers Church. Honestly, I wasn't expecting much. As a general rule, I kind of hate plays. In my experience, they're always cheesy and boring. But the play was exceptionally good, and I'm genuinely impressed. I then packed up for the road trip and finally finished listening to every episode of Pints with Aquinas. Seriously, I have listened to 200 plus episodes of that thing. And that's a lot of hours. So that was a pretty major accomplishment. We then finally hit the road, and I spent many hours sorting through music on Spotify. And when I wasn't doing that, I used the car ride to work on a paper about the pragmatic considerations of Christianity versus atheism. That night, we slept in a hotel, and this is the first time we brought the dog with us. And although he's pretty well behaved, he did wake me up in the night twice. If Grace ever finds her dog strangled to death, it may not be because of me. Continuing our travels, I spent the remainder of the drive finishing my paper on pragmatic Christianity, which, if you guys care to read, I would love to share. And I also compiled a 700 song playlist, literally every song I like. And yeah, it took a long time, especially since I was looking through new Christian artists. Side note, if you haven't heard of her, Holly Starr has some great songs, Human among them, which you should check out. Here's a few pictures from the drive. Boop. Pictures. The last two were taken at Salt Flats near Salt Lake City. I had this whole Salt Flats were like a perfect mirror. It was very cool. We then finally reached a cousin's house in Redding, California, and we played some video games until bed. If you want a brief idea of what my family's like, I'll give you one word and one picture. Feelers. Yeah. Out of the 17 of us that came, I think I'm one of the 4 thinkers out of all of us, and the other thinkers are all adults. Okay, I guess I'm technically an adult, but they're all old adults. So I'm like the black sheep, as was said in this group for sure. The next day we woke up and one of the younger cousins, Sam, I think he's 15 now, and I worked on making a mold from a rubber imprint of my signet. You see, he's been melting down metal and casting it for a while now. And he hasn't actually accomplished much yet because he gives up without someone doing it with him. So yeah, we made a mold, then binge watched all the Mandalorian episodes, which aren't nearly as good as they're cracked out to be, in my opinion. After doing that, I beat Sam in Monopoly. I love winning. And then Jonathan, Toby, Ben, Sam, and me went down to Five Guys and split 2 things of large fries, which we barely managed to eat. And then we wandered around the mall for a bit until we eventually went home. Later that night, I played a game of Risk and got really close to being wiped out, and then really close to wiping everyone else out, but then I ended up losing, unfortunately. It was still pretty fun. And then we watched the worst movie of all time, aka Napoleon Dynamite, which I hadn't seen until then, and now I wish I could have lived my whole life in the bliss of never seeing it. Man, it was so awkward. I hate those kind of movies. The next day was Christmas Eve. We played a lot of Halo against each other, which was pretty fun, except Toby is an epic gamer, so he kept winning. Me and Sam tried to cast some stuff, and we did okay. Here's what we made and what it looked like. And this is the best cast we did. The loom did so much worse than the lead, so just use lead for molding. And it may not be perfect, but I'm still pretty happy with it. It almost looks like it was intended to be beaten and worn up, and I think I'm going to wire it to my steering wheel. So yeah, we didn't get that cast done on this particular day, but we got it done eventually. Later, me and Toby shot some stuff with BB guns and wrist rockets, so that was okay. I then proceeded to win a game of Ticket to Ride, but only barely. And then the kids were forced to drink alcohol. I mean, I'm kind of exaggerating, but I'm kind of not. The parents told us that we had to take shots of brandy because we were having fondue later that night, and apparently brandy helps you digest the cheese or something. The only ones who got out of it were the youngest girls who adamantly refused. So yeah, we all did a shot of brandy. Honestly, alcohol tastes so bad. Why do people drink it? Plus, the brandy tasted warm. I don't know how to explain it, but it was weird. We then proceeded to have a fondue night, which was pretty great. And then, it being Christmas Eve, the family gathered together and laughed about random things for like an hour straight. I mostly just observed. Honestly, foodies can laugh at the most random stuff. Still, it was a cool atmosphere to be in, and I realized I've got a pretty great family. The next day, we dug into stockings, only to find largely uninteresting trinkets, and then we hit each other with big punching balloon bag things for like 20 minutes. One such an interesting trinket that turned out to be abnormally interesting. Then Uncle Dathan, the guy whose face you saw earlier, and all the cousins, except the girls, because there were only 2 girls in the group, and they're pretty young, transported themselves by some means or other, I rollerbladed, to this bridge where we climbed under and used the maintenance walkway to get to the middle of. I didn't do it. We then transported ourselves all the way back. The whole trip was pretty tiring. And then ate basically a Thanksgiving dinner, even though, it was a Christmas dinner. We then watched this anime movie about a postman and proceeded to play a game of Modified Catan, which I won. Toby then showed me this game called Super Hot, where time moves only when you do, so I got sucked into that for a bit. But when I emerged, I was able to watch the tail end of the movie everyone else was watching about a hot air balloon called Argonauts or something like that, and it was good. Stressful, but good. And then Christmas was over. The next day I played some more Super Hot until everyone left to go kayaking at a nearby lake. Here's some pictures of that. Jonathan, the guy on the left, made that kayak. It took him like 500 hours or something. Also, we saw a bald eagle. Woo! It was pretty fun. I got to listen to my new music as I went out in the water by myself, and it was actually really relaxing. When we got back, we played Halo together. Amazingly, I lost in bend to Risk. Not an experience I want to revisit in detail. And then we watched this movie called Yesterday, which was okay. And sometime in we saw this, which was Hankley halfway in a couch cushion. The cat's like squished. Anyway, we took care of the cat for about a year. His name's Hankley, and he's a pretty good cat, to be honest. Moving on, the next day we got up early to ride to the Redwoods. Halfway there, Sam did us all the favor of puking in the car. Always an enjoyable experience. Here's my cousin trying to block out the smell. However, other than that, we made it to the beach. We were stopping at Alive. Here's some pictures of that. We didn't do a whole lot there. Dad took some drone footage. I beat Sam in stick checkers, like normal checkers, but with sticks. And at the end of this beach time, we did go to a coffee shop, and I just have to share this paper on the wall because I thought it was great. It reads, "Really credible studies show that kids who put away their toys grow up to be really cool adults in every facet of life. From Really Credible Studies Institute." After that, we left the cafe and proceeded to drive to the Redwoods, which was cool. We kind of just wandered around and did nothing in particular. Here's a bunch of pictures, and here's the road on the way there. And here's some trees of abnormal size. And here's Ben accidentally posing in a tree. And here's Sam in a tree. And yeah, the Redwoods are pretty impressive. Also, during that trip, I lost the one article of clothing I care about, namely my journey hat, and then Ben just happened to find it, which I was super thankful for. Plus, Sam had these really nice headphones, so I got to use those to listen to really high-quality music on the drive, and that was great, too. We also temporarily stopped to stargaze on the way home, which reminded me of New Zealand. Which was pretty great, though the land of Kiwis still tops it. The start of the next day was pretty boring, honestly. We went to my Uncle Doug and Aunt Amber's house, and we didn't do much. I started reading this article Melissa gave me. Oh, I need to mention that Melissa said she preferred to be excluded from these emails, so I'm not going to include her anymore, just FYI. So I worked on reading that article, and it was pretty boring. Me, Toby, and Sam walked down to the skate shop and did basically nothing. We got some donuts and just walked back. But then, that night, we had an amazing debate night. The Spock was my view on marriage, always good at being controversial. And as usual, it was a good old mob debate. But we branched into a lot of stuff. Particularly Jonathan, the resident EFJ, was interested in the conversation quite a bit. We hopped between topics a lot, but yeah, I'm now regarded as a semi-genius. A very humble semi-genius. But yeah, that night was awesome. And for sure, my favorite part of the trip. Then, later that night, me and Sam stayed up till like literally 3 a.m. talking about, well, it varied, but mostly Bethel. He's an INFP, so I was trying to explain how he quote-unquote knew certain things about Bethel and his life. And I was trying to extract that knowledge from his feely convictions and make an argument. But he mostly failed at making an argument. But it was still a really good deep conversation because he shared his life and heart, and I got to listen. So yeah, definitely the best day of the trip, even though the start was super boring. The next day I woke up and went to Bethel for church. It was okay, I guess. Pretty uneventful. Sam claimed that he got gold dust on his hands, but I was unimpressed. It was like really fine glitter that I had on my hands too. I think there might have just been, something glittery touched. Maybe the chairs. The whole trip was a lot less Bethel-y than last time. Anyway, I then went with the girls to see Frozen 2, which was a huge mistake. Okay, in all honesty, the first Frozen wasn't bad. Sure, it had romance, and all of it was still centered around the story, but all of it was still centered around the story and well made. No such thing can be said of Frozen 2. The story was incoherent. It's like they just throw in random scenes and try and mash it together. And there was so much emotion! Drag's hand down face. Gosh, it was like the characters were either crying or singing it every other minute. Shivers. Yeah, it was a big mistake. If you haven't watched it yet, spare yourself. Then the torturous experience was over, and we kind of just did nothing until the family watched an old movie called Rocketeer, as well as a news episode of The Mandalorian, which was especially bad. And then we went to sleep. At this point, the room we were sleeping in was pretty darn messy. Here's a picture of the disarray. The next day, me and Sam tried to cast stuff again, but we basically failed. We played some Halo, walked down to the shore, bought some Snapple, also a boring experience, and then I played 3 games of chess. The first with Dad, which I won. Then with Toby, which I also won. Then with Uncle Dathan, which I won, but with some luck. I went back and played it out, and I could have lost, but I got lucky and won. Then later that night, we did a bit of hide and seek, in which Grace got so close to finding me. Then came New Year's Eve, in which Sam and I tried one last heroic casting, and failed again. After that, Jonathan took us to his dad's house where we used his tools to make the cast a little bit better. Then, in utter boredom, we walked to the park, played a bit of groundies, and then buried Jonathan in rubber. And then we went back to Uncle Dathan and Hillary's house, and I almost beat Toby in Halo, which would have been quite the accomplishment. And with that, the new year arrived, and we toasted to the future and went to bed. The next morning, we woke up, got on the road, and I've been writing this email since then. I have now successfully passed numerous hours riding the car to update you on life. Bows. Thank you. I deserve all your praise and adoration. All right, let me know what's happening on your end, and if it's possible, if you could host me in the unlikely event I come to New Zealand, be sure to let me know. Until next time.